Bro, andyan na tayo. Live na tayo. Ayan.
Ayan.
Ayan na guys. Ito na. Ito ang inaabangan ng lahat. Live.
Richard A. Darren in the house,
Yeah,
in the house,
exactly.
literally
I know,
in
man.
my in
In
my
the
house, in
house.
my house,
Richard Hidar in the house.
house guest.
Yan, guys. Pumunta ako all the way here
Uh,
para mag-record ng vlogs about Rizal.
God,
Para lang talagang loading natin ito si Leloy. Leloy,
dami ko ng importanteng guest dito sa bahay na to ha. Dapat mag-logbook na ako dito tapos pumipirma lahat baka maging important
I'm
historical
telling you,
document at
man,
one
this could
point.
be like that Paris apartment of like, well, Camus and like
Grabe naman,
Sartre, no?
di.
Yun yung ganyan tayo
Ganung level ka na ba,
ganun
pare?
ka-pretentious tayo.
Level ka na
Ganun
ba?
ka-pretentious. No, but honestly, bro, how do you feel that in the house? Ali G in the
Ali
house.
G in the
Yeah,
house.
kamusta na?
Well, naka 2 nights ka na ba dito? 1 night, 2 nights.
2 nights
Two
na.
nights na, 2 nights na. We've been enjoying ourselves. Ang dami na natin napag-usapan.
Yes.
Minsan ilang ako kasi feel ko rini-record mo ako, bro eh. Akala ko,
No, no, no.
minsan akala ko may mga sinasabi ako na off the record. Baka andyan na yung camera habang nagluluto ako, natakot ako.
Alam mo na,
May
Leloy,
camera eh.
just in case, di ko makuha yung mga gusto
Kasi,
kong pagkain.
kasi kanina, pinag-uusapan na natin kung sino yung mga ahente ng China. Muntik na tayong madulas at sabihin natin kung sino ba talaga yung mga ahente ng
Basta, ang
China.
sabi ko ay mga hindi ahente ng China ay, wag na lang. Okay, guys. No, actually, we're trying to record a bunch of stuff about illustrados of the 21st century. So I think that was the thing that really binds us together, bounds us together. Sorry, medyo logistics pa tayo dito.
Tingnan natin.
Guys, by the way, mag-isip kayo ng mga tanong, no, as we get going with this. Now, seriously, Lel, let's get the ball rolling, no. We want to have this kind of freestyle discussion, which is something I'm very proud of. May-distract ka, no. And ito, first of all, kamusta? How's the United States of America? Anong experience mo
I
so
don't know
far
how do
dito?
ikaw yung nakipag-usap sa mga tao dito eh. Kasi parang if you live here, in a sense, parang tuloy-tuloy na pare-pareho naman eh. It takes somebody who doesn't live here to kind of figure out what it's like. Kasi for us, ang nakikita mo na news all the time is ang hina ni Joe Biden. Mahina rin naman si Trump. But it seems as if the media and people are magnifying Joe Biden's weaknesses more than they are magnifying Donald Trump's weaknesses. And that could be by virtue of the fact na siya yung presidente, madaling magnify yung weakness niya. Or maybe that could be by virtue of the fact na matatalo na talaga si Biden and there's going to be another Trump presidency and it's really going to be depressing. So I don't know. I don't know how you feel here. Pero in many ways, nakakapagod ang American news ngayon. Especially, of course, because of yung non-stop support for Israel. I mean, they said a couple of things after they bombed yung mga trabahador ni Chef Jose Andres, di ba? Yung mga nagluluto para sa mga Palestinians. Medyo pumitik ng konting gobyerno. But ultimately, feel naman ng mga tao.
The reason I
It's
ask
a war with US
the
support.
reason
So,
I ask this,
yung moral ng liberals ngayon, parang feel ko medyo mababa. Hopefully, baka tumaas. But feel ko ngayon mababa ang moral.
well, Lele, the reason I'm asking is because, of course, maraming sa ating mga kabayan, they have this kind of American dream image of America. And then there are a lot of Filipinos who have been all around the world. Scandinavia, the Japans and Taiwans. Let's just say mga medyo maayos na bansa. And then they come to the United States. They see the homelessness in San Francisco. I see homeless people next to the American Congress in the Pennsylvania Avenue. So suddenly your image of America is this kind of a late capitalist, this kind of a decaying superpower. Yes. And then of course you have all of this American Russian disinformation highlighting yung bridge na natamaan sa sa Baltimore, the bad ugly trains here, compared to what you of course used to also enjoy when you were based in Kyoto. But honestly,
tsaka yung mga trend daw sa China. Sabi
yeah,
ng sabi ng mga ahente na wala daw sinabi yung mga train dito compared dun sa majestic trains.
Or airports China, for that matter. I mean, the airports in the US, like, I want. But honestly, I was in South Carolina, then I went to Georgia, then I flew here. At the same time, you realize, US is ang yaman ng bansa. It's a very wealthy country.
Yeah, it's
a very wealthy country.
Grabe pa rin yung kayamanan, di ba?
Yeah.
I mean, hindi naman sobrang yaman itong area na to. This is a university
Yeah.
neighborhood. So mostly mga professors na nakatira dito or people who are working for the university. I mean, I work at the University of California here in Berkeley. And if you walk around, parang it's middle class. Pero pag pumunta ka dun sa shopping street dyan, di ba?
Yeah.
Pumasok ka dun sa place na nagbebenta dyan ng unan. Tanong mo magkano yung unan? $100. So,
Yeah.
5,000 pesos para sa isang unan.
Yeah.
Grabe, in an area where ostensibly, dapat mga academic yung nakatira, may ganong klaseng mga unan. So, ewan ko bakit unan yung naisip ko, but I think it's just so telling na may bibili ng $100
Yeah.
pillow still says something about the wealth of this place. And it speaks to the power of the United States,
It
diba?
is very powerful.
And yun nga, kahit sabihin ng mga ahente ng China, tsaka yung mga taong funny, gusto na lang pag-usapan natin yung no comment, diba? Kahit yung mga taong funny no comment, kahit sabihin pa nila na, declining ng US, dami pa rin gustong pumunta dito eh. For all of its problems.
Including Chinese people. I have a lot of Chinese friends from China. They immigrated here kasi di na nila kaya yung zero COVID time, the whole Xi Jinping crackdown and all of that. They're here in the US.
Dami pa rin gustong pumunta dito. And I think magpa 5 years na ako nakatira dito sa US. Although every summer, of course, bumabalik ako sa Pilipinas. Podcast tayo. Para mag-podcast video, umuwi ako every summer. Feel ko na yung attractiveness ng US to immigrants is still its strength, di ba? Kasi multicultural pa rin eh. I mean, lakad ka lang dyan, may Thai restaurant ka agad, di ba? May Ethiopian restaurant down the corner. So, may Mexican
a lot of South Asians in tech industry.
And obviously here, lots of South Asian food also. So, or there's even a Burmese restaurant in downtown. So, that's the kind of diversity that you get in progressive cities like Berkeley here in the United States. And that's immensely appealing for me kasi mahal ko yung Pilipinas, pero isa sa mga problema natin sa Pilipinas, hindi tayo diverse, di ba? Mostly mga kapwa Pilipino lang natin yung kausap natin. And masarap yung diversity. And of course, part of the diversity is maraming Pinoy. So, hindi ka rin ma-homesick.
So, are we agreeing with a lot of podcasters and all that there's something fundamentally wrong with the news cycles and the mainstream media business? It tends to sensationalize fault lines and problems. I mean, we're not denying that there are problems in America, as in any major democracy around the world. You talk about France, you talk about UK.
Yeah.
The list is long, diba? And I'm not also romanticizing politics in Japan. They have a different problem there. But you think there's also a lot of... Kasi for a moment when I try not to think about politics and I just look at the US from South, deep South, to here, California, from the woke to anti-woke, it's a wealthy country.
Yeah.
There's so much energy, there's hubris, there's openness.
Saka sabihin mo parang, di ba, parang kung decline ng US, sindihan mo nga yung TV mo, ano yung pinapanood mo, di ba? Yung mga streaming service mo, ano yung pinapanood mo. Tignan mo yung Spotify mo, ano yung pinapakinggan mo, di ba? The world is still dominated by US culture, di ba?
Although Spotify is Swedish.
Pero yung music
I know, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
May diversity now, of course, di ba? Siyempre, yung emergence of K-pop and things like that. But, our entertainment is still largely defined by the US. I mean, and the world still largely speaks a language that, the US is the biggest promoter of now, English, of course. So, and then the other thing, na volume daw pa.
No, you should speak louder.
Okay, sige. Ano kasi bedroom voice na ako kasi wala na ako eh.
Gabi time. Sorry, I know. Yeah, I know.
May na ako in a bit kaya medyo nagbe-bedroom voice na
My
ako.
apologies.
Ito high energy to, kahit anong oras eh.
Let's go.
Pero ano ba yung sabi ko? Ang laki kasi nitong lugar
na to. Huwag mo sila pansinin, just do your thing.
Bro, ang laki kasi nitong lugar na to.
Yeah.
So ang hirap mong husgahan yung US based on generalizations.
Slice of the society.
Kasi ikaw, you just traveled from South Carolina to probably the most liberal city in the US, Berkeley. And I'm sure this is a very different experience.
Red to blue, yeah.
Deep blue.
Yeah.
Deep blue. Yeah. Maybe even socialist, So, how does it feel? Ang tanong sa atin, sorry, hindi ako, ano daw ang topic natin?
Wala nga topic eh.
Walang topic, medyo nag-free flow kami, pero yun nga, please feel free to ask us questions. And mukhang ang dami ng tanong tungkol sa no comment.
Yeah,
Ngayon
so
na pinag-uusapan na rin naman natin yung US at saka yung China. Pag-usapan na natin yung no comment ng ating Vice President. At may pahabol pa dun di ba? Umasa pa siya sa kapatid niya. Sabi niya, kung ano yung sinabi ng kapatid ko, si Paulo Duterte, yun na yun, di ba? Yun na yun.
mm,
Parang that's it. You don't wanna talk about this anymore. Bakit ang lantaran, bro? Bakit ang
mm,
lantaran? Parang ano na ba to? Hindi na sila nahihiya sabihin na talagang nalantaran na silang pro-China.
honestly, yun nga, I mean, one thing that I was Lelo has a knack for putting things in a very interesting way. But I mean, a few years ago, you said Philippine studies is almost Duterte studies. I think was this in
Si,
Colombia?
nakuha ko yun kay Prof. Mark Thompson ko ata nakuha yun.
Okay, so see, very honest guy, also giving credit where credit is due. Although I want to clarify, if my blogger na nagsabi, I just kidding. I'm not, you know where I'm gonna go, but never mind. No, no, we are very original people, and we in our writings we reference people if ever we really got ideas from them. But anyways, going back to this, you said so, or you referring to, I mean, like someone else first. Do you see na medyo laos ng mga Dutertes in terms of Duterte Philippine studies? Kasi ako, of course, during the Duterte time, I go around the world. I mean, you know that. Until the pandemic kind of restricted things slightly. But now I'm here. Everyone is gushing over Marcos
Marcos,
Jr. It's like from deep red to deep blue. Everyone's obviously deep blue in a difference, but in a way, well, Biden is blue, right? Democrat administration, and they're in a few days' time they're gonna host Marcos in the White House, and parang laos na bigla. Parang ngayon mas cool to talk about. I don't, hindi naman cool. Parang bumabalik na yung Imeldific discussions.
Ganun
You
ba?
know what I'm saying?
I thought that too. And then lumabas yung libro ni Patricia. And then
Okay.
I realized there's still an appetite to talk about Duterte. Kasi honestly, nung ano, parang sabi ko nga kay Patricia, parang ilabas mo na yan habang presidente pa si Digong.
Oh,
Kasi
so,
pag linabas mo yan at hindi na presidente si Digong, baka laos na, 'di ba? So nung lumabas yung libro, medyo kabado ako kasi hindi na presidente, medyo nakalimutan na, akala ko nakalimutan na yung drug war. And then it just exploded, di ba? Top 10 books of New York Times, binasa ni Obama, top 10 books ng Economist, right? It was one of the most talked about books of 2023. Which made me realize people are still thinking, there's something about Duterte na kahit wala na siya sa headlines, if you bring him up, people are going to want to talk about him. Now, of course, yung Laos, may pinakaiba yun sa popularity. Popular pa ba si Digong? And of course, we're seeing Digong finally getting dented. Right? In a way, I'm not surprised. Surprised ka ba na bumababa yung popularity ni Digong? Parang hindi naman kasi lagi sinasabi ni Ronnie Holmes, 'di ba? Sa survey, mataas ang presidente because of the signaling power of the office of the president. Pag nawala yung signaling power
parang
mo,
nakakapogi yan.
nakakapogi yung signaling power mo, may plataforma ka Ang dali kagad bumaba niyan. We think na unpopular si Pinoy at the end of his term, but hindi naman unpopular si Pinoy at the end of his term. It was damaged, of course, by laglag bala, mamasapan, no? Pero talagang bumaba si Pinoy nung ang signaling power mo ay signaling power na ni Duterte at kaya na siyang siraan, di ba? So, well, mas mataas ang pinanggalingan ni Duterte kaysa kay Pinoy, kaya mas mabagal yung pagbagsak. Pero I think it matters na wala na siyang signaling power at ang signaling power ng mga Marcos ay slowly naging anti-Duterte na. Now, let's not forget na ang signaling power ni Duterte was anti-Pinoy from day one, di ba? Kaya talagang siniraan kaagad. Yung signaling power ng Marcos is slowly nagiging anti-Duterte. So, how much are they going to use that to damage Duterte in the long run?
But
Hindi
the
ko
thing
sigurado.
is, speaking of signaling of Duterte, a lot of his signaling was attacking Marcos openly and calling for a people power. How did that go down here? Or personally, how did you absorb yung minumura niya si Marcos, tapos accusing each other of being polvoronic, the whole fentanyl versus polvoron. I mean, as crazy as this guy is, as crazy as Philippine politics is, that's something, right? I mean, I do global politics, but this is like next level
Yeah,
crazy.
how do you translate it kasi to English, yung si Duterte? I think dun sa libro ni Pat, it's actually a kind of great English translation of Duterte na parang halos naririnig mo na yung Tagalog and yung Bisaya ni Duterte doon sa translation. Mostly Tagalog yung translation. That's largely due to the translators at Pat work with, former house guest of mine, si Kael Ko, for example, did
But
that
she's
the
also comms
translation.
linguistics
Yeah, yeah,
background,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You could see that coming out there, yeah.
So magaling yung talaga yung pagka-translate kay Duterte into English. I don't know itong mga recent traits si Duterte, if people, kung nagre-register dito. And I mean, Duterte has really said a number of crazy things, di ba? Since he left office. Dahil nga, meron siyang show na si Ronald lang yung nanonood, di ba? Pinapanood. Di ba? Si Ronald lang yung nanonood.
Hindi na
Para
Ronald ang pangalan niya.
ni Ronaldo.
Aldens Richard Ronald. Crush ng bayan na si Ronald.
Oo. Oo.
So, as a historian, let's say if you were a historian 50 years from now and you're still alive, let's say, at the rate you're keeping healthy, I think not only alive, you're going to be very robust in 50 years. If you were going to write about Digong 50 years from now, let's say, this guy in his 80s, healthy and strong, what do you think you would say about
Mass
that?
murderer pa rin eh. Parang, kaya nga it's important na nalabas na ni Patricia kagad yung libro niya eh. Markahan na natin. Sabihin na natin kung ano ito. This
Tag
is
na natin siya.
This is a criminal against humanity. Actually, yung important si Duterte is we've never really had a criminal against humanity in our history before. Di ba? Wala tayong Idi Amin. Wala tayong Hitler.
Not even Marcos Sr.?
Debatable, di ba? Pero
he's a classic dictator, but not
debatable,
genocidal
di ba?
dictator.
Pero
Yeah.
Duterte called himself a Hitler. He called himself an Idi Amin, di ba? He was siya yung nagsabi na ilagay niyo ako alongside these criminals against humanity, di ba? And clearly yung bloodlust niya is unparalleled. Parang I don't know, people didn't pay enough attention to this, but I was really shocked after yung Hamas terror attack sa Israel. He said, Prime Minister Netanyahu, I'll support you if you turn Gaza into the world's largest cemetery. I mean, so I think 50 years from now, this is the man who introduced bloodlust, utter and absolute bloodlust to our
as
society.
A populist
as
thrust.
a populist thrust,
exactly.
diba? Talagang, I think one of a kind siya sa Philippine history kasi I think even within like academic circles, Marcos Sr., whether or not he's a criminal against humanity, debatiin ka ng mga tao eh.
Yeah, I mean, definitely he's a dictator with human rights violation, pero ibang threshold
pero ito
kasi.
Yung talagang criminal against humanity. And yung criminal against humanity, I think let's break it down, di ba? Kasi criminal against who? Humanity? Meaning, he's not just a criminal against Filipino, he's a criminal against every single human being in the world. Kasi hinurak niya yung dangal ng tao. Hinurak niya yung konsepto ng pagkatao. That is such a grave sin, di ba? Yuyurakin mo, hindi lang yung dangal ng Pilipino, hindi lang yung dangal mo, yung dangal ng mga kaibigan mo, yung dangal ng konsepto ng pagkatao. That's what a criminal against humanity is.
And he engaged in systematic dehumanizations of thousands of his own people. I mean, these are not minorities, right? This is his own people.
Yeah. Right? After a person like that, the concept of human life has been cheapened, di ba? That's the sin eh. Somebody who really cheapens human life.
And incites hatred. And incites genocidal hatred, right?
Incites hatred.
Well, I mean, again, so you're obviously referring to the crimes against humanity charges at the International Criminal Court. Obviously, if the International Criminal Court moves against him in the coming months, as some ex-senator, among others, keep on telling us, aside from Ronald Llamas, then obviously he'll be in the books also as the first Asian leader to be. Kasi wala pa eh. Usually it's either Serbian, whatever, something like that, or African, sub-Saharan African. So he'll be the first, Asian to be there in the ICC. So that itself is something we have to watch for. But how do you see Marcos Jr. so far? I asked that question also with Justice Carpio. So don't worry, I'm not doing this to you because I hate you.
Hindi naman natin napapag-usapan to, di ba? Parang alam mo naman yung take ko, di ba? Parang hirap dito. The other day we were playing a mental experiment. Nag-usap tayo doon, di ba? Sabi ko, Richard, kung ang pangalan niya hindi Ferdinand Marcos Jr.
Kasi
Reyes, say President Reyes. And he did everything that Ferdinand Marcos Jr. did from 2022 until today. How would you regard him? And honestly, if you were to ask me, I would regard him okay. I would say okay. Maybe
Pasado.
pasado pero maybe kulang sa vision pero pasado,
Clearly,
di ba?
kulang. Yeah, yeah.
So I think my reservation with Bongbong has to do with what he represents, a kind of forgetting, di ba? A kind of impunity. Pwede kang magnakaw ng ganun and still get elected. He represents that eh. People can get away with bloody murder in the Philippines. So that's why that largely informs my opposition to him. But it's not so much policy, it's what he represents.
My counter argument to that would be two levels. The first one is the conventional argument, which is um, by denying the crimes of his father's era, of his family for that matter, he's already continuing a certain kind of
Yeah,
injustice.
of course.
But
That's pero hindi siya policy.
I understand, I
Oo.
understand. But that would be my first argument. Na it's hard for me not to put the name aside. But my understanding is, and I think this is the better argument even, is that a lot of what he's doing is also because he's aware of his name.
Yes.
If his name were Reyes, I think he would have been more adventurous in his
That's
career.
right. That's right.
So that would be my strongest counter
That's right,
argument.
that's
So I told you the first one is a traditional
That's right.
argument, but second one is I think the more interesting argument because
That's right.
if you look at the charter change issue, I think if his name were Reyes, he would have been more aggressive on
Yeah,
charter
right.
change. Precisely because he's a Marcos Jr., he's very conscious.
Kailangan niya layuan.
Exact. So he tends to kind of be overly cautious. And for good reasons,
Ah.
because he's also trying to win over the
Ah.
West and win over people from the opposition. So that would be my immediate counter argument.
That's brilliant.
But your insight is absolutely correct that if you look, if for a moment you just close your eyes and someone gives you a box of policies and what is ticked, ang laki ng overlap niya with any standard post-Marcos president.
Yes, yeah.
So that's a paradox.
EDSA president siya.
Exactly.
More of an EDSA president than Digong,
Exactly.
diba? In fact, ang foreign policy, tinutuloy niya ang foreign policy ni Benigno Aquino III. Yun naman talaga ang foreign policy.
Next level pa.
Oo, EDCA. I mean, we've talked about this many times. Sino bang pumirma ng EDCA? Si Noynoy. Diba?
Yeah.
So this is a continuity, a foreign policy wise sa mga dilawan, very dilawan foreign policy. And yun nga, I think you're right. He's doing it largely because he cannot flirt with the excesses of his father. Favorite example ko dyan, Central Bank eh, di ba? Di ba Central Bank ng father niya nung 80s, parang ang rumor doon is Central Bank would print pesos in Malacanang. Ganun ka tinding abuso ng Central Bank. The first thing he does is appoints Eli Remolona, di ba? Well, kind of the most straightforward, one of the safest central bankers around and a very conservative central banker. Na hindi talaga magpiprint ng pera kahit anong gawin mo, di ba? So, in fact nga, parang sobrang conservative ni Central Bank Governor Remolona na mismo ang NEDA ni Bongbong ay umaangal na. Pero si President Marcos is of course hands off, Central Bank can do what it wants. So, kung tatay niya yun, di ba, papakailaman niya yung Central Bank.
Exactly.
So, yung mga ganong klaseng excesses.
And the joint patrols. So, for instance, the idea of joint patrols with the US and our allies in the West Philippines. Si Panon ni Pinoy yan. And now, interesting, you suddenly see, finally, this quadrilateral patrol is happening. Now, over the weekend, before I went to sleep, I saw a certain senator claiming na siya yung dahilan na may quadrilateral.
Ganun ba?
Kasi may isang senator na political advisor ni Digong na itago natin sa pangalan na Tolentino.
Ganun ba? Ganun ba?
He's just out of nowhere biglang nagpo-posture siya on West Philippines. So we need a quadrilateral security dialogue, etc. Which actually the American Assistant Secretary who was in town during that time kind of played down. But actually the idea of Quad has been there for a long time. And the only reason it didn't happen earlier is because of yung boss niya, which is Digong.
Okay.
So actually I found that interesting. I also find it interesting that not only Bato wearing West Philippine couture and trolling China, and then Bongo talking about condemnation of your charot, yung mga ganun. Which tells you, parang medyo kawawa rin si Digong in a sense na yung pro-China charot niya, talagang ang hirap i-sustain yan eh. Because China is not delivering much. And then, as soon as the winds of change are there, even yung mga loyalists niya, I think only Robin Hood Padilla ay consistent na hindi ko criticize ang China. Diba? And Harry Roque is Harry Roque. Now, without overdoing
what do you mean? Harry Roque is Harry Roque.
Harry, like, Harry,
Siya si
whatever
Harry, siya si
goes.
Harry.
Hindi ko nga alam, may expression si Ronald na hindi ko na alam saan pupulitin tong tao to kasi ayon sa kanila panelo, ayon sa kanya na tuloy 4% na yung preference niya sa Okta survey, di ba? So, now, I want
Haring KSP lang talaga na walang may gusto, kahit kahit ganong papansin, isinusuka ng taong bayan eh.
Basta kung magsulat ako ng nobela, there's gonna be Harry character there. It's not gonna be hard to guess. I'm just gonna make some reconstructions there for ethereal cosmetics. But ito bro, let's talk about opposition. Now, what is your sense of the opposition? I know now I'm gonna put you in trouble, but no, honestly, like, kanina kasi we started by talking about Biden and Democrats and because the question always in the Philippines is actually around the world. I was in Europe. It's like, wala na bang ibang Biden versus Trump, di ba?
Ganun na rin ba sa Pilipinas?
So, ang question naman sa Pilipinas is, do we need a totally new opposition? Kasi remember kanina we were talking about PITA. I'm not gonna talk about what we talked about.
Move forward.
But this idea of move forward, third way, young, charismatic, aggressive, kind of pa-cute na konyo version ng Thailand. It worked in Thailand, except ang kabangga niya military.
Grabe, no? Tsaka yung konyo na to na ang ganda-ganda ng kotse, di ba?
Ferrari.
Na parang may appeal sa working class at may appeal sa mga pisante, no? Grabe, no?
Which means aspirational talagang tao. Hindi to, kaya ang mali ni Rojas eh.
So hindi mo kailangan maligo sa dagat ng basura para manalo as president.
Kaya sabi ko, Binay in a Lacoste. Benta ang Binay in Lacoste. Rojas in a mukhang kawawa thing, it will have the opposite effect. Exactly. I know. So, aspirational kasang Pinoy eh. Kaya nga tingnan mo yung mga vloggers na sikat sa Philippines. Yung mga openly they brag na 1 million pesos yung watch nila, openly they brag na openly nag-brag na 1 million. Yung may pagka-trashy pero benta yung trashy. And I would say it's Imelda Marcos who started all of that influencer self-aggrandizement culture and all. Okay, now I gave you enough lead time. Anong basa mo? I was just delaying.
Sa opposition.
Now, let's be fair and nice.
Mataas pa rin si Leni Robredo.
Number 3 siya.
Diba?
Yeah.
So naalala ko, ilang beses na natin ito sinabi, diba? After nung election, natalo si Leni, naging senador si Riza, sabi ni Leni, Riza, you are now the leader of the opposition.
Right. Passing the baton.
Passing the baton.
Yeah.
Can she do that again? I think it would be useful now for Leni to actually tell people ano ba talaga yung gusto niya for the opposition. Because whether or not, and alam ko gusto niya magpahinga, alam ko she wants to spend time with her daughters, and I also know that she has other interests now. And is probably even thinking about local politics. But I think given that kahit pinasa niya yung baton kay Riza, people are still looking towards her. And the survey clearly reflects that people are still looking towards her.
Yeah, Riza is just 1%. Leni's like double digit.
So, diba? So nakatingin pa rin sa kanya pa rin nakatingin yung mga tao. That the future of the opposition is still in the hands of Leni Robredo. For me. And what that means is either tumakbo siya ulit or ipasa or mag-anoint siya. And I think I think this should happen soon. Because we know nga na one of our weaknesses dun sa last election ay hindi tayo nakahanap ng opposition candidate early enough. So, we don't want to make the same mistakes twice. And unfortunately, really, parang nakasalalay kay Ma'am Leni kung yung future ng opposition, kung anong landas ba talaga yung tatahakin. And I know, of course, this is unfair. This is unfair to Leni Robredo. Nananahimik yung tao, di ba? Pero, yun yung sinasabi ng survey, di ba? Na parang sa kanya pa rin nakatingin yung mga tao, nag-aabang pa rin.
The mist of uncertainty is actually complicating things. Kasi for me, Riza is still in the shadow of Leni, in a very big shadow of Leni. Like, of course, Riza is appreciated as a senator, but Riza as being the future of the opposition, meaning 2028, VP or presidency. That's quite interesting. Now, how do you find the fact that Grace Poe is doing very well for vice president? She's almost like, she's super ahead of everyone. And Robin Hood Padilla is not doing very well in a lot of service I'm looking at in terms of 2028 picture. Nakachamba siya dito sa isa, pero mukhang mahirapan siya for leveling up. What is your read on the Grace Poe phenomenon? Baka kasi we're missing, kasi Grace Poe parang kinancel siya ng opposition. And then, in fairness naman to her, she was independent in 2019. Siya lang yung hindi nagganon together with Nancy. So I think people are not appreciating that her game always was to play the independent card. Totally a third way. That was always her thing eh.
And
Diba?
'di ba, naalala mo, just to recall how long we've been having these chats kay Tito Boy, when was this? 2015? Late 2015,
Yeah.
early 2016.
When a certain Richard Haydarian did not underestimate a certain Digong,
Sabi
diba?
mo, we both said naman that at that time, this is Grace Poe's election
Yeah,
to lose,
exactly.
di
Yeah.
ba? And then, humirit ka, sabi mo, may dark horse.
Dark horse
Si
shot, and
Rodrigo
he turned out
Duterte.
exactly as that.
Hindi naman kita kinontradict nun, pero wala lang akong sinabi.
Yeah.
Pero
No, no,
naalala
exactly.
ko yun.
None of you contradicted me, which means you were open to the idea.
Kahit si Tito Boy, hindi ka naman
Oh, hindi.
kinontradict
No
nun.
one kaya nga, actually all of us, I mean, I think that video, if it's still around, it's gonna age well.
Sana mahanap nga yun eh, no?
Sana
mahanap
piniratan
yun,
namin. Tito Boy, baka naman.
Sana mahanap yun yung mas bata-bata pa kami ni Richard.
Medyo
no?
fresh pa,
Medyo
fresh pa kami
fresh
noon.
pa kami noon.
Oo.
Naka-leather jacket ka pa noon, Brad.
Bro.
Ang lamig kasi sa studio ni Tito
Hindi, in
Boy.
fairness. Walang sa studio.
Ang lamig na studio ni Tito Boy.
Nag-isip ako ng showbiz career, hindi natuloy eh. Pero, you know, you never know. You never know. Kaya dito, meron kami mga videos dito ng mga action stars. So baka kami yung magtapat dun sa mga alt-right, ano.
Pero sa akin ganun lang kasi, bumalik ka lang dun sa moment na yun nung 2015, 2016. Late nung 2015, di ba?
Next year, it will be...
Akala talaga natin, magiging presidente si Grace po, di ba? Ganun lang kasimple yun eh. Hindi basta-basta nawawala yung ganung klaseng clout, yung ganung klaseng pull.
And wala siyang major mistake or anything since then. Safe siya through and through.
At walang bumira sa kanya ng matindi.
Yeah, kaya she just hovered there. So it looks like the graceful strategy might still pay off. She might have a second chance, at least as a VP. And then who knows, she can work it out from there, di ba?
At saka ako personally, natatalino na ako kay Grace po.
She was the best debater.
Ang talino ni Grace
She was the best debater.
Ang talino ni Grace po. Kasi ako para tayong debater, di ba? Madali akong ma-win over by great debaters. And I never liked Gilbert Todoro, but when I saw him in 2010 debate everyone, nung nilampaso niya si Dean, sino ba makalaban niya?
Lahat.
Si Villar, nilampaso niya, di ba? Yung kapatiran, nilampaso niya. Kahit si Noy nilampaso niya.
Si Pelokang itim ba nandun?
Lahat nilampaso niya, di ba? Si Grace hindi naman gano'n kasing as dominant as Gilbert. I've never seen a presidential candidate as dominant in a debate as Gilbert Todoro. Pero si Grace was getting there. She was kind of starting to dominate her opponents until nag-joke-joke itong si Digong and turned,
audience
impact. And then turned the debates into a comedy show na medyo sinusugan din naman ni Grace po. Kasalanan niya yun eh. Kasi diba siya yung siya yung nag-feed ng jokes kay Digong eh.
And she was trying, I mean, the accusation is she was playing safe until it was too late. Even on the Digong side of things, diba?
Sorry, yung ano lang panoorin niyo yung debate na ayaw magsalita ni Binay at saka ni Mar. Tapos may 10 minutes na dahil hinihintay nila si Binay, 'di ba? Ayaw kasi magsalita ni Binay. May 10 minutes na si Grace po at saka si Digong na yung nagsasalita.
Then nagte-trending yan.
Tapos panoorin niyo yun ulit.
Nagsusulsul yan.
Finifeed ni Grace ng joke si Digong. That was the moment I think when Grace po unwittingly gave the election to Rodrigo Duterte.
I would also add, ito yung part na, uy, Mar, pang ilang ihi mo na yan, nervyoso ka yata, di ba, gano'n ni Digong nun, si Lord De Vera pa yung host nun, di ba? But the thing is, also during the debates, if you look at it, when Digong attacked Mar as, incompetent ka, same lang yung argument ni Poe, Grace Poe. I mean, and I felt like, whoa, this escalated very, and you could see, napikon si Mar, wait lang, I mean, Digong, I understand, whereas, so,
tapos si Digong komedyante, si Grace showbiz, di ba? So chill sila pareho eh.
Yeah, I think that debate, that TV5 debate, I'm not saying it because nasa TV5 na ako, but that TV5 debate I think was very defining because it ended essentially Be Nice.
It ended Be Nice and then nag-ascend si Grace po.
Yeah.
You see naman sa survey na
Bumulusok si Digong. Kasi sa January polls Asia, Be Nice bumalik pa rin sa number 1. But Grace clearly was being competitive. And then of course the Supreme Court case came and all. So actually everything came together, convergence of factors for Digong to win. So there was a lot of contingency involved.
I think si Grace po baka ngayon, 'di ba? Mataas na number 1 sa PAIS, 'di ba? Parang
super malayo, like on 35%. Tapos number 2 is Amy at like 15%.
Baka gawin na lang 'yun, 'di ba? Takbo na lang siya vice, 'di ba?
Right.
And then madali na lang maging presidente pagkatapos nun.
Exactly.
Kasi bata pa rin that's the other thing, 'di ba? Grace was always
still young.
Grace was still young.
She looks fresh and strong and she's a very smart person. Now, obviously we cannot talk about Grace alone if we're not going to talk about who could be her running mate as president, I don't think it's going to be Sara. So I think Rafi could be one. Although part of us are hoping if Riza considers VP, then that. But a graceful Rafi one could look like a solid kind of. Both of them are 35% by the way, Pulse Asia. No, that could be an interesting.
Mahirap talunin yun.
Yeah, now let's talk about Tulfo. This is your time to shine, bro.
Mahirap talunin yun.
The Tulfo factor is insane. Ben Tulfo is number 4 in Octa.
Si Bitag, ako si Ben Tulfo. Bibitagin kita, Richard.
Proprietary.
Na-meet ko yan dati na-meet ko yan si Ben.
Ayan na.
Na-interview ko yan si Ben Tulfo once for The Star. Pasok ako sa kwarto, di ba? Naghihintay ako. Masok si Ben. Indoors, putya, naka-shades. Tapos masikip yung shirt. Tapos parang, saan ang interview? Sino ba bibitagin ko dito? Ikaw ba bibitagin ko? Sabi ko, sir, ako po, bitagin niyo na po ako, sir. He has the Tulfo charisma. Actually, for me, yung Tulfo charisma, magkakaiba eh.
Yeah, shades of gray yan. Yeah.
Kasi si Ben yung parang siga pero medyo ginagago ka ng konti. Yun yung charisma niya. Si Rafi, yun yung talagang parang siya of course idol, talagang tagapagtanggol ng masa, si Tol Rafi, di ba? And then si Erwin naman has this kind of like a lot more quiet charisma din. I would say he's actually he's also charismatic, but by a hair he's less charismatic than the two other brothers kasi tahimik siya na tao eh.
Except he's doing very well in his numbers.
Pero like, I think galing yun yung pagkatahimik niya galing yun sa kanyang US military yan si Erwin.
Air Force.
Sundalo yan dito sa US eh. So
meron
talaga siyang quiet charisma.
Now, speaking of this, no, now you may raise some technical issues later.
Maganda daw impersonation ko, Ben Tulfo. Salamat. Bibitagin kita.
Wait lang. What did we say again was the greatest moment in Philippine reality show? Kasi I'll be honest, bro. The first time na-realize ko there's this world of Tulfo is yung Raymart Santiago.
yung sabi ni Idol Rafi, Raymart Barreto, pag makita kita, baka yung puwet mo, nasa bibig mo na, sabi ni Rafi. Tapos, si Ben Tulfo naman, Raymart, magkita tayo sa isang abandoned warehouse. Pumasok tayo doon, tapos last man standing, susubukan ko ang galing mo. Propriety. Ito yung nalalaman kong propriety bilang isang journalist. Sabi niya gano'n. Raymart, pumasok. Na-ban yung mga tulpo. Na-ban yung T3 for 2 weeks. dahil nilapastanga nila. Tapos si Erwin naman parang Raymart, dapat kasama ko yung kuya ko dun sa airport nung sinuntok mo yung kuya mo. Marami kayo, Raymart. Pero tinamaan ang kuya ko, pero I'm going to my kuya. Kahit marami kayo, I'm very proud of my kuya kasi kahit paano, Raymart, tinamaan ka pa rin. At kung ano na ako, Raymart.
Sige lang, bro. I said this is your time to shine, bro.
Is that here to me? Kung ano na, Raymart. Baka wala ako dito sa TV ngayon at magkasama tayo sa kulungan. Baka nakapa.
That was good, bro. Tsaka yung isa pang naalala ko. Bro, yung isa pang naalala ko yung hinamon niya yung mga Montano brothers.
Hindi ko alam.
Meron yun, bro. Meron din yung away.
Sorry, impression lang. Naisip ko parang ano kaya mangyayari kung magkasindakan mga Tulfo brothers at saka si Cheese Escudero?
Shit.
yung impression yung Cheese Escudero, pam. Ano sa tingin sa akin? Akala niya ba robot ako? Akala niya ba senador ako? Malakas din ang aking paninindigan dahil ako si Cheese Escudero. Cheese, pumasok tayo sa isang abandoned warehouse. Sabaw na tayo, gago.
Shit, bro. Mapahamak tayo, bro.
Medyo gabi na eh. Pero, nakakatawa kasi yung mga Tulfo. And actually, if you zoom out of that, actually, if you put your academic lens, pare toxic masculinity yun eh. Toxic
Super.
masculinity yun. Pero ako na feminista, hindi naman ako macho na tao.
Yeah.
Natatawa ako eh. Natatawa ako and I can't explain why because even something that I actually find like toxic and talaga naman dapat talagang binansin na ng MTRCB pagkatapos nila nilapastangan si Raymond Santiago na gano'n eh. Pero the fact na kahit ako na I find it so toxic na
Yeah.
dadala means there's a real tool for charisma na hindi natin made-deny. And if we don't try to explain it, we're going to miss out on yung Filipino mentality that really explains the electorate, di ba? Kaya kailangan aralin eh. Kailangan
Filipino
pumasok
culture yan.
tayo eh.
Oh.
Oh.
I mean, the reason why I like talking about these issues to you. So, kita nyo, hindi kami tulfonatic. Dami naman galit sa atin. Sabi niya, tulfonatic.
Tinawag ko ang toxic masculinity,
Yeah,
di ba? Oh.
And you can see where this conversation is going. As you know, everything I did was to set up the conversation for
Dadalhin
this.
ka sa abandoned warehouse, magsusuntukan din tayo.
Propriety.
Oo.
Gago mo talaga tuwang ni Ben. Gago ka talaga. But ito bro. Sorry bro. Whew. But, you know, how would you feel if a Tulfo would be a president in 2028? Are you worried? Are you seriously worried about that prospect?
Di ba
Or
blank slate pa? Ewan ko, parang
like let's say Rafi, kasi si Rafi medyo mellowed down siya. At least my understanding, he's nothing close to ano. And from my understanding of the interview I had with him was mahusay. In a way na alam niya mag-calibrate, alam niya saan siya saan like
you know what I interviewed him in 2014
Yeah.
for the Star and then gumawa din ako ng isang article for the Manila Review. And the conclusion hindi ako abogado obviously, but the conclusion I came out with is Rafi Tulfo has a legal education. And that's not because he's a lawyer.
organic lawyer.
It's because every time tumawag yung mga tao sa kanya, kailangan niya aralin yung batas, di ba? Kasi, oy, Idol Rafi, ginawa to sa akin ng pulis. Kaya alam niya kung ano ba yung violation ng pulis. Dahil pag tatawagan niya yung general, sasabihin niya, Sir, yung pulis na to, binviolate itong ordinansang ito. Or minsan, people are going to try to debate with him. Sir, tama naman yung ginawa ko. And then he's going to have to rebut that, di ba? And so I asked him, Sir, bakit ang dami niyong alam tungkol sa batas? Sabi niya, paulit-ulit lang. Same complaints. Again and again and again. So, alam mo yung batas. So, one thing I'll say is that actually, Rafi Tulfo he's not a lawyer, but I would classify him as a practiced legal practitioner. Make of that what you will, di ba? But he's very competent. He's very competent in that sphere. And hindi ako sigurado that the other Tulfos have that. Kasi yung paulit-ulit, everyday repetitive.
Yeah, I think Rafi is a different
kailangan mo
ballgame.
aralin yung mga ordinansya dahil may mga pananagutin ka eh. Can you imagine kung nagkamali si Rafi doon? Di ba? Parang, kunwari, di ba, may airing na kapitan. Na, tinawagan yung general. Sinabi niya, Sir, General, yung kapitan nyo violating the regulation. Tapos mali yung regulation, napaya siya sa general. Sabit siya, di ba?
I mean, it's not like they didn't have mistakes.
Pero yung ganun kasing big mistakes na talagang mabe-break siya, mahirap yun for him eh. Kaya, I don't know. I'm kind of punting on the answer. All I'm saying is that my insight with Rafi Tulfo is that he has a legal education. He's a legal practitioner.
I think your answer is, first of all, there's an underappreciation. Second, yes, there's a toxic masculinity factor with the Tulfo brand, but each brother is, different shade or different part. I mean, in terms of perch in a different part of the spectrum. And then siguro, I mean, my sense is this is also a guy who's an evolving,
Sana nga.
an evolved figure in a sense that positioning niya, there's a consistency in terms na andun pa rin yung Tulfo style of fiscalizer. At the same time, I see some refinements going on there. Kasi one of the attacks that some people have, like yung kaibigan ko si Attorney Libayan, na keeps on attacking Tulfo and all. Ang tanong ko lang naman kay kaibigan ko is, wait lang, let's compare him again to Duterte. Duterte, lawyer, sure. This guy is not a lawyer, sure, sa beda pa, matinong school. And yet the guy is openly calling for essentially mass violence, and calling for, overthrowing the constitutional order. I never saw that with Rafi. For all of their mistakes, and aminado naman si Rafi at least. I don't know about Erwin. I didn't ask him about Erwin about that. Ibang issue kasi DSWD secretary siya nun eh. But this Rafi openly said, are you for due process or not? And I think his argument was something along the lines of, it's not me being against the due process, it's me trying to plug in the
Right,
operational
right, right.
weaknesses in the system and all. Although of course he didn't say it in that way, but yun yung interpretation ko ng sinasabi niya. Again, I think there was a kind of a hindi naman admission, but there was a kind of a idea na minsan maybe in
Minsan,
artful and all of that, but generally ito yung intention, ito yung approach. So honestly, and who am I to question his sincerity? Kasi I know yung mga attacks na grandstanding yan, nagpa-epal yan and all. But alam mo, hindi ka pwede mag-epal ng buong buhay mo na consistently na you're fighting for people. This is not about some ex-human rights lawyer or ex-ganyan na kasi Epalis, naghanap ka ng mga high-profile cases once in a while para lang maging relevant ka. This guy is dealing with the meat grinder of everyday injustice. And obviously, there are gonna be mistakes when you handle 1,000 cases over a year or so.
At saka actually, yung mga kaso sa wanted sa radyo, mga totoong kaso yun, mga totoong hinaing ng tao. For example, yung ang dami for example, mga labor rights violations. Ang dalas na tumawag sa DOLE, di ba? Or domestic violence, ganyan. Or police abuse. These are actually real everyday abuses na naging basis ng populism niya. Hindi yung basis ng in contrast to yung populism ni Digong, which he based on an overblown drug specter na parang ang problema ng lipunan kay Digong ay mayroong mga drug zombies na pinapatay yung buong lipunan, 'di ba? Hindi kasi yung kay Rafi parang pang araw-araw At saka hindi siya invento, 'di ba? Like for example, nung binanata niya si Cynthia Villar.
Hindi siya pwede contrived. Yeah.
Nung binanata niya si Cynthia Villar for land displacement, hindi naman invento 'yun 'di ba? So I think parang may similarities kay Duterte, pero kasi si Duterte conman talaga Parang yung mga problema na sinasaad ni Duterte, yung mga parang mga drug addict na yung parang this image of the Philippines as overrun with drug addicts.
Yeah, narco state. Exactly.
Parang that's a con That's a con. Parang mandurugas lang, sinungaling lang talaga yung si Duterte Ito naman hindi naman siya ganoon.
Kasi
hindi ko sinasabi
I see there
hindi naman siya ganoon.
They're demagogues, right? And of course, we're men of letters. And actually, when you think about it, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle were not against democracy. They were just scared about the tendency of democracy in terms of descending into zones of demagoguery. So that's why their idea was you need a more mature democracy with some adjustments. So Aristotle talk about bringing in like a good elite meritocratic system, mixed system, right? So it's not true that they were against democracy per se, but they correctly pointed out the tendency of democracy to go into this kind of false consensus and sensationalization. Next thing you have a demagogue and tyranny, right? Now, as I said, I think there's a TULFO brand, which you can say you said toxic masculinity. I could say also there's a demagoguery element, but there are also levels to this, diba? And again, a while ago lang, we had an interview with Okta president, si Professor Ryan. I said, clearly, lumalabas sa surveys, TULFO, very strong. Number 1 si Erwin, number 4 si Ben, number 1 si Rafi for the next elections for presidency. The Dutertes are strong. It's easy to say, tong dalawa na to, tong dalawang mokong na to, enabler na lang sila kasi they just gave up. But if you look at it, close to 50% of Filipinos are either independent, undecided, anti-system. So obviously the old opposition is really not putting it together. Medyo feeling ko, hindi ko naman sinasabi na canceled sila, but they really have to do a major rebranding. Now, as you can see, all of the conversation over the past 45 minutes was really to set the tone for this guy, right? Who is really our inspiration, right? So before you accuse us of being enablers of Tulfos and all, remember where we're coming from, right? First of all, I'm not a fan of Macron, but I think he had a point when he said, you have to take the world as it is and then try to affect change from there. You don't pretend the world is otherwise then affect change, then you just set yourself up for disappointment. I completely agree with that. That kind of pragmatic idealism, right? And for everything you can say about Macron, I think that approach helped him at least on certain issues. Let's talk about this because you mentioned toxic masculinity. There's the demagoguery and all of that. And I remember when I was reading El Filibusterismo, the reason that's one of my favorite novels, and I put it at the same level as the Russian novels. I mean, all novels are nice, but for me, the Russian novels were always political, and that's why I always loved them, whether it's Turgenev, whether it's Dostoevsky, whether it's Tolstoy. And El Fili was, for me, almost at the same level in terms of not only the aesthetic beauty, but also in the kind of political pungence that it had to me. Now, speaking of Rizal, parang Elf really kind of forecasted a lot of things is happening to our country. But it's same Rizal in itself was a complete enough man in his own era and all to perhaps give us an idea of what we really need. That 50% of Filipinos, based on Octa research, who could be mobilized for an alternative. We talked about PITA, but we should be even talk about PITA when we had someone like Rizal in our country that could be an inspiration for a 21st century model, right? So you see what
Tsaka
I
si
did there?
Rizal, parang yung sabi nga natin, di ba, yung aspirational. At aspirational naman si Rizal eh, di ba?
Exactly.
Kasi tingin mo si Rizal, di ba, studied abroad, Inquilino family,
Right.
meaning sila yung nangangasiwa ng asyenda ng mga praile.
Right.
Tapos, of course, well-traveled, spoke multiple languages, and didn't really have, I don't think, close siya sa masa. Pero yung appeal niya sa masa,
Yeah.
laki, di ba? Kasi ang biggest fan niya, si Andres Bonifacio, who wasn't actually masa, he was lower middle class. But talagang sinasamba siya ng particular segment of the urban lower middle class, diba? And part of it was aspiration, but part of it was also nabilib lang talaga sila sa kanya. So meron nga talaga, tama ka, meron nga talagang role for aspirational politics because Rizal is actually an aspirational figure. Meron even yung class profile.
He's such a multifaceted and impressive person that and he was such a forward-looking modern man that I think is very relevant for our era. But just speaking of masculinity, for instance, I think people always tend to put Rizal on the pedestal as like the genius man, kind of a Renaissance man with a three-piece suit and all of that. But he was also a kind of a macho man in his own way, right? Non-toxic macho man.
Yeah. I think he was very strong for one thing. Yung will kung gusto niyo panoorin yung o meron akong old episode ng Basagan ng Trip, yung How to Work Out Like Rizal, mapanood yun, parang
and we're gonna do our own kind of a vlog on that soon. So
finigure out namin ng coach ko, actually yung coach ko sa Pilipinas, finigure out namin how Rizal worked out. So actually you can sort of recreate a Rizal workout and figure out what it was like to work out like Rizal. You would do a lot of calisthenics, but you would also do a lot of really heavy lifting. And by heavy lifting, I mean 1 to 5 reps of a really heavy weight.
Yeah.
Hindi yung pampamacho, yung pampalakas. Because actually, we know from sports science that lifting from 1 to 5 reps gets you really strong. It gets you kind of big. But if you want to get big, the more efficient rep ranges are usually higher. So Rizal was actually deceptively strong. Kahit mapayat yan, malakas yan. And yung dumbbell niya must have been minimum 20 kg, and he was probably wrapping that out for maybe fives.
Yeah, so 20 kg for a guy was like 130, 120
Yeah, something
pounds.
like that.
That's
yeah,
huge,
maybe
bro.
like wrapping that out for reps.
So more than 40% of his weight.
Yeah.
Rough
And
calculation.
and yun nga, naniniwala ako, I'm actually an instructor for a company that teaches mostly kettlebells, but other stuff also is strong first.
Ba't ka nagpalit ng shirt?
And
I'm just kidding.
one of yung quotations na one of the things that they remind their instructors of all the time is strength has a higher purpose. So we're not just strong for ourselves, we're strong for other people. Ako this year, babanggitin ko sa podcast natin, sa next podcast natin, may nag-resolution ako, ang resolution ko for 2024, walang matanda sa airport hindi ko na dun sa baggage claim section, walang matanda na hindi ko tutulungan with their bags. Every time makita ko, ako yung magbubuhat para sa kanila. Resolution ko lang.
And you're teaching also people of that they're
yeah. And then once a week meron akong mga 2 or 3 senior na babae na tinutulungan ko silang magbuhat.
Yung mga titas of California.
May tita ako ngayon na I would say maybe 120 pounds. Ganyan.
Oh wow!
We're having her deadlift around 32 kg now. So it's not.
Oh my god!
That's not bad, you know.
Gangster.
And so strength is for everyone. Strength has a higher purpose, and strength has a civic value, and that's why I've been thinking about Rizal a lot, because he thought about strength as not just individual strength, but as the strength of Filipinos. And hindi dapat natin tinatalikuran yung mga attributes yan because we associate them with masculinity, right?
Yeah.
Masculinity need not be toxic, and certain traits that we associate with men, like strength, need not be for men only. Who is the great symbol of Filipino physical strength? Not a man,
Hidelin
actually.
Diaz,
It's Hidelin Diaz. Talagang, and kita nyo na ba yung Instagram ni Hidelin tsaka nung asawa niya? It's amazing because they have 6-year-olds, maybe even 5-year-olds, carrying heavy barbells.
Oh, wow.
They're doing
Hindi ko
like
nakita yun
20 k, 6-year-olds doing like whatever 15 kg
Yeah.
cleans ganun.
Jesus
Tapos
Christ.
syempre yung mga bobo nagko-comment,
Child abuse.
Mami Hidelin, hindi po ba bababansot yung mga bata na yan? Old news na yun, di ba? Hindi nakakabansot sa mga bata ang pagbubuhat. That's like 19 kopong-kopong science. Sasabihin niyo yun kay Hidrin Diaz.
Kasi
Sasabihin niyo yun kay Hidrin Diaz. Ano kayo? Galing niyo lang. Galing niyo ah.
Magche-cherry fair na lang kayo para tumakat kayo sa akin.
Mami Hidilin, hindi po ba mababansot yung mga ito? Kakainis. Everybody should be strong. Kids, men, women, everybody should be strong. So that we can all help each other.
And exactly, for Rizal, it was also part of civic duty. A strong democracy or republic, for that matter, back in the day, was also about having strong, healthy, robust citizens, right? So the calisthenics in the Prussian world and the Scandinavians had their own version. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because of course we'll discuss that more in our vlogs and all. But just for people to have a preview of what are the things we're cooking up.
Actually, ano yun, yung gymnastic movements, big yun sa yung German gymnastics, big yun sa Germany. And actually, a lot of the gymnastic practitioners sa Germany, they got exiled during the two wars because many of them were actually pacifists. And that's how a lot of them ended up in the US.
The US, yeah.
Kaya doon din pumasok yung German gymnastics dito. Pero si Rizal, di ba, lover of all things German. So he loved German gymnastics. And when we say gymnastics ngayon, we think ano lang, mostly body weight movement. But actually at that time, gymnastics was more like physical culture, you know. And that's a wonderful word, di ba? Physical culture, because yung embodiment, yung strength is a culture. It's a culture of lifting, it's a culture of working out with your body, it's a culture of cultivating your body. And the process of being cultured requires some skill and hard work, di ba? So I work out, for example, I mostly just focus on 3 lifts and try to just really perfect 3 lifts because it's a skill. Diba? Strength is a skill, and physical culture is about the cultivation of certain skills that can aid society more broadly. That's why I love lifting. I adore lifting, and everybody should lift.
Malakas siya. I mean, I honestly, deceptive yung katawan niya. I mean, you can see I'm much bigger than him, but when we try to carry stuff, like, oh my God, this is much heavier. So, the Bruce Lee effect. Last one, I know you want to sleep because maraming tayong gagawin bukas and all na work. The reason why I also na-raise ko tong issue na ito is because I think we have this kind of we discussed this kind of a negative exceptionalism whereby parang parati natin dinidown ng sarili natin. We always try to make ourselves at best a David or at worst kind of a hopeless underdog. Pinagtatawanan yung sarili natin. Navy, pinagtatawanan natin yung sarili team. Pansin mo yan, like when I was posting stuff about the latest quadrilateral, like Philippines and all.
Ganda kaya na pinost mo.
Naghanap ako ng angle para shut up yung mga ano yan. Kasi there were actually some angles like so now, ay, parang medyo maliit yung barko natin kumpara sa kanya. Which actually is not true. It's just an angle issue. Alam mo naman, vlogger ako. So I said, alam ko, i-shut down ko yung mga ano na yan. Yung mga makapili na digong style na yan. Na, sabi, wala naman tayong hopeless kid. So actually, I found some pictures. Ang ganda na na-emphasize na kuwapo din yung mga warships natin. By the way, our warships are Korean, South Korean. So yung mga BTS fans and all. So, the reason I'm mentioning this is, you know, Rizal was quite a diminutive man. And always the accusation was, oh, he's insecure, he's trying to overcompensate. But actually, he was a very self-assured, a very complete man in that sense. Or at least he was trying to move towards that direction. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that is the mentality we need if we want to make the Philippines a really legit country in the 21st century. And when I say legit, I mean it in a pedestrian sense of capable, self-confident, productive. Not a superpower, definitely.
Ayun naman natin maglaro dun di ba?
Exactly. But a kind of a country na, like Sweden, it's 10 million people, but they're not a pushover. They have been on their own for a long time. Dahil lang sa katangahan ni Putin, they are forced to join NATO. So, genius Putin just added 2 capable countries, including Sweden, to the NATO. But, you get what I'm saying? Like, I think there is some fundamental cultural misunderstanding and kind of a negative exceptionalist and self-defeating mindset there, which is exactly what Rizal and his legacy is supposed to be an antithesis to. Kaya I keep on going back to that because even with Rizal, oh, he was just overcompensating. He was just an insecure guy, ganun. So dinadown pa natin si Rizal. He was like one of our greatest
Yeah,
guys.
yeah.
So what do you have to say about that? Kasi may kinalaman din nito sa West Philippines and all of that. Because if we don't feel we can hold our own, then loser talaga tayo, di ba?
Kahit yung mga yung mga ano 'di ba, mga OFW minsan, I know this kasi for a while OFW. I guess technically, hindi na ako technically OFW ngayon pero dati OFW ako
Yeah.
technically. Pero in terms of where I am, OFW pa rin ako. And this is, I'm an overseas Filipino working in the United States. Um, yung sense na let's just keep to ourselves. Kasi if makisalimuha tayo dun sa broader society kung saan tayo nakatira, we won't measure up. So we'll just stay within Filipino enclaves. Ganyan din ako initially nung estudyante ako, hinahanap ko puro mga Pilipino lang para hindi ako mapahiya, di ba? Para I'm only in my comfort zone. And there's a kind of insecurity there. I think yung next step, di ba, we're becoming more global Filipinos. Yung next step dyan is to just throw ourselves into other communities and not be insecure na kaya ko ba makapag-usap sa mga puti? Kaya ko ba silang debatihin? Kaya ko ba magtrabaho with them? 'Di ba? May ganyan
Mga
lagi. Mga afam, 'di ba? May ganyan laging insecurity.
Mga fam,
And I see it all the time abroad, yung Filipinos keeping to themselves dahil feeling nila kahit nag-abroad na sila, hindi pa rin nila kayang makipagbanggaan sa mga puti. And I think we should really end that kind of mentality because it's putting a cap din on our cosmopolitanism. Sorry, yung sagot ko napaka-narrow, parang
No,
OFW,
well, actually, it's a
OFW
very...
experience yung sagot. OFW
Napaisip din
experience
ako
yung
dun
sagot ko.
Yeah. No, because my cousins also are like overseas Philippines, and their issue was, for instance, one of them is like, ang daming Pilipino kunyari dito sa Espanya or Ibiza and gano'n, wala pang Filipino restaurant. Like, they rather work for another restaurant na Thai or whatever. Na parang, kasi you need a certain of audacity.
Audacity.
No, I'm gonna go on my own. So God bless him, Galleon na yung restaurant na siya ngayon na Filipino, Italian, and all of that. So,
yeah, or like dito, it took a while, di ba? Because Filipinos did not want to open up a high-class Filipino restaurant sa Bay Area.
Fine dining.
Fine dining, wala. Kasi na-insecure, kaya ba talaga natin mag-compete? Until there's this one Chinoy dito sa amin dito, si Chef Francis Ang, galing talagang Pilipinas, said, fuck it, I'll put up an expensive Filipino restaurant in the middle of San Francisco.
Yeah.
So, I would suggest you try Abaca. Pag napunta ka sa San Francisco. And it's really great. It's fine dining, pero...
Alam mo naman guys, Ilocano, alam mo naman.
Pero, alam mo, yung maganda doon ako first time nakatry ng certain Moro dishes.
Okay, now I'm in.
Dito pa.
Oh
Hindi pa
God.
sa Manila. Puta, Manilenyo ako, di pa
Now
ako
you know my
nakakain ng
weakness.
Moro dishes.
My weakness
diba?
is regional foods. Whether my people, Cordillera, or our brothers, the Maranao food is fantastic. Yung yellow rice and all of that, I really appreciate that. No. So what you're saying is, so where did we go wrong? I know we want to finish this episode and all, but where did we go wrong and how are we going right? So I think you already gave us some answers about where we're going right. But where did we go wrong in terms of itong lost sense of... I mean, because look at Rizal, right? They were technically not even considered as full humans, right? Because they're just colonial subjects. And look at the audacity of going there, not only with Espanol, with the French, with the Germans, with the Czech, with the English people, London, Bohemia, and all of that, America, Japan. So,
alam mo, may mga tao sasabihin nila, and I know yung typical parang nationalist argument is, kasi the colonizers created an insecurity complex sa atin. Tama naman yun, pero I think insecurity complexes as a result of colonialism can be overcome. Consider the Koreans, di ba? Colonized by the Japanese. But are they an insecure people? Hindi. Kasi yumaman sila eh. So, I think isang solusyon yun, kailangan na talaga nating yumaman as a society. I'm not being facetious here. Kasi yung wealth, changes the way you think about yourself. And yung mayaman naman talaga tayo. I think we need to get used used to the fact that we're reaching middle income. So in a way, the problem will resolve itself as we get richer. But we also have to acknowledge that hindi tayo pipichugin. Kaya I really appreciate yung mga picture mo na pinapakita na hindi pipichugin ang Pilipinas.
I'm very conscious about that. Because hindi naman sinungaling at totoo yan. I've been to those warships. I've seen the side of the Philippines which is on the move. That's why I really appreciate this conversation kasi ako napapansin ko, actually Korea is a good
Oo.
example because
Oo.
it's a jiu-jitsu case,
Ah.
right? They use their insecurity and grievance against Japan to beat Japan.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they're super
May gano'n.
competitive.
Oo nga, oo nga.
Actually, that's a
Yeah,
perfect
yeah. Nice, nice, nice.
example of
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can weaponize in a good way the weapon of the week, whereby. So like now in India, obviously they're still poor compared to UK. But when they overtook UK as the fourth largest economy, they were like, sorry, fifth largest economy. They were like,
Yeah,
oh, like that.
yeah, yeah.
Like, for me, it's very conceivable within few years we're gonna be bigger GDP than Spain,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
one of our former colonizers. Medyo mahirap ang US, but Spain probably we can beat them in certain area. And if you go to Spain right now, a lot of billionaire Filipinos have big towers and
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
that. So I'm just saying, we need more of this kind of pioneers, Filipino pioneers, who just said, yeah, let's just go for it. And that's why your house is a special place because you have someone like Patricia Invalista that was like on Obama's list of book, right? You have someone like Gideon Lasco is like a global anthropologist.
Nilalaglag mo na lahat ng
climber.
mga bumibisita
Ay,
dito.
sorry.
Hindi, okay
So,
lang, okay lang.
eh,
Pinopost ko din
no,
naman pag
you
binibisita ako dito.
you told me, amigo, we're gonna promote your house into
my
something,
house.
and then of course now they have the
Oo nga.
vlogger.
Oo.
I'm just kidding.
Oo.
So I don't know. Maybe who knows? In your own little ways.
Di ba yung mga sundalo, lagi lang ginagamit yung word pag meron silang ina-admire na fellow sundalo,
Yeah.
yung matikas. Di ba?
I didn't know that.
Di ba? Parang,
Yeah.
grabe, di ba? Pag may general na ina-admire, yung general na yan, taga-PL, yung matikas. Di ba? Parang, it's such a nice word. Hindi ko siya mapaliwanag kung ano siya yung tikas. Pero kailangan natin magkaroon ng tikas as a society, di ba?
Thank you, Lela. I know you're super tired. This is not your hour. Tito ka talaga.
Tito
ako naman.
Meme na ako.
Ako, ADHD whole day, right? Like, hyper morning, hyper. Kanina sa super hyper, I had to do it para hindi ako mapalpitate sa coffee and all of that. Thank you so much, Lela. If people have questions and all, please just post it. We'll have it hopefully on the next, whether live or sometime when he has a time kasi busy siya.
Ilang araw pa si Richard dito sa bahay.
We'll still have to give a talk and all pala. Thank you so much, Lela. I appreciate it. God bless and have a good sleep.
Sige.
Babay lang ako.
Tuloy-tuloy pa to. Okay. Meme na ako. Good night.
Na ako sa kanila. And then, tuloy pa ako sa mga West Philippine Sea discussions. Okay guys, thank you so much. Please wag niyo lighting masyado. Magulo kong buhok. Pupunta ako, maligo ako mamaya para ayusin tong buhok na maling shampoo ginamit natin. But on that note, thank you very much guys. Maraming salamat. I hope na appreciate niyo itong mga makulit namin discussions. But you can see yung range of discussions. You can see the passion we put into these discussions, and you can also see na we're constantly just assessing and reassessing yung mga basic assumptions namin and all. So please feel free to forward questions or something. Baka we can still make some vlogs on it. Baka we can make some another live. But then again, as you know, ang hirap kasing time zone difference natin is 15 hours behind. This is the best we can do under the current conditions. On that note, thank you very much. God bless, and talk to you soon.